after the conversation. Thank you, Sophie. So the session is being recorded, and I'll just go straight to what our agenda looks like today. But before I share my screen with the agenda, I'll just ask for some basic engagement rules or terms, that you all mute yourselves. And like, you're welcome to have your camera on, but I think it would be ideal if you can have them off, but then unmute when you are asked to speak. And then also if you can have your camera on as well, like when you speak, that would also be great. And as you speak, like apart from the speakers of today, maybe like when it's time for questions and discussions, just tell us your name, where you're from, and which organization or entity you're representing. So going straight onto the agenda, just gonna quickly share my screen. So today's focus, we're actually just going to be giving an update as to where we are at in terms of the replenishment, all the efforts from all our different partners. We have with us today, Claudia from the Global Fund. Claudia will be giving us an update in terms of the replenishment landscape, and also with regards to pledges to date. We also have colleagues from the Global Fund Advocacy Network from Africa. We have Zeinabou and Olivia, who will also be joining us later. They will be sharing with us about the Meet the Target campaign that they have been like making efforts and facilitating. And then also giving us an update and what we can expect and how we can basically organize and drive, like, say, messages in the lead up to the upcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting that is scheduled to take place this month on the 20th in Rwanda. And then we'll also have Rachel. Rachel is also from the Global Fund Advocacy Network, like the Asia Pacific region. She will also be giving us an update in terms of their efforts and initiatives around the replenishment. And then we have Quinton. Quinton will basically be assisting us with the reflections just from today and key points in terms of the kind of messages that we may need to actually just amplify and continue raising more awareness, like through our different like platforms. We'll allow time for questions and discussions, but considering, you know, like time and maybe depending on the numbers we'll have on the webinar, we'll also encourage you to just type your comments and your questions on the chat, and we will get to them. So just to once again welcome you and just remind you of the important task we have ahead in terms of like the efforts that we have kickstarted. And I'm sure also all of you on your end have been doing quite a lot of work to really just remind like donor countries, like private sectors, and everyone to really just, you know, like prioritize this cycle of the replenishment, the Global Fund's replenishment like process, which is basically the pledging conference is going to take place in September in the United States. But just as a reminder to everyone, like why we're doing this and why this is important. It is important because if we don't meet, the Global Fund doesn't meet the set target of $18 billion as per investment case, then that would mean that a lot of the efforts that we've done today, a lot of the efforts that other countries, for an example, have committed and pledged, including, for an example, the United States, which has pledged like $6 billion towards the Global Fund. All of those efforts would basically like amount to nothing because we will not be able to continue saving and reaching lives in order to mitigate against challenges that people living with HIV, communities affected by TB and malaria would not be able to basically like ensure that they have access, continuous access to services. And we will also not be making, we'll also be reversing the efforts we have made in terms of pushing towards gender equity women and girls' rights in all our diversity. So this is really important, and some of us have been reminded of this. Some of us have been reminded of this as we had last month a media training workshop for about 34 women from across Asia and the African continent who were participating in a workshop that Women for Global Fund had facilitated to basically strengthen the capacity of these advocates to be able to raise more awareness through, for an example, engaging in country and also including like signing on some of the letters that we have been sending out, including some of our partners like the Global Advocacy Network. And I think one of the great outcomes of that training was actually a call to action that all the women signed on. This was I'll ask everyone to just mute again. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. So the call to action that we have out, you can actually go to our website, Women for Global Fund website, to have a look at the call to action. But this was basically like a collection of key messages and key voices from the different women based on their experiences and why they believe this is actually important. But in addition to that, I would like to draw your attention to quite a few initiatives that are actually of priority and pressing for this month of June. For an example, like today, we have, like today's the deadline. So we have a letter that we have put together, like targeting the Prime Minister, Foreign Affairs, Foreign Secretary, and other UK government leaders, calling on the UK government to basically also meet their commitment and also pledge beyond like more and above the 30%. And then I'll share the links of where you can basically add your name to these calls on the chat box shortly. And then secondly, tomorrow, which is the 15th of June, there's also another letter that is being directed at the President of the Republic of Korea. And then on the 16th of June, which is Thursday this week, we also have a day of action, also targeting messages like for the UK government. So these are all the initiatives or different initiatives that we have basically like working together with partners, have been pulling together to ensure that as countries and heads of states prepare also for the Commonwealth heads of government meeting in Rwanda, that they also remember to put on their agenda like investing and contributing to the Global Fund 7th Replenishment. I will share the links right now on the chat. So you can basically be able to just click on the links and go and add your name to these important calls to action for the different governments or heads of states. And maybe before I continue, I would just like to check in with my colleagues. I know, like, yeah, we have Sophie on the line. If there's anything, Sophie, you would like to add in terms of the efforts that Women for Global Fund together with partners have been leading on. Sophie?
No, thanks, Fezile. I think you've covered it all, and we've added the links in the chat box. So thank you.
All right. Perfect. All right. Okay. Great. I suppose there's no harm also in emphasis. I've just also added them. So feel free to just check on the chat box and do add your name to, like, yeah, those important letters, like remembering that today is the deadline for the one for the UK, and then tomorrow is the deadline for sign-ons for the letter going to the President of the Republic of Korea. And then the 16th of June is the day of action. So there will be a Twitter space that you can all engage in. So without any further ado, everyone, I'd like to just now call on Claudia. Claudia, you can introduce yourself, and I believe you will be sharing your slides from your end to just give us an update in terms of where we're at from the Global Fund's perspective. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you, Fezile. Thanks, Sophie. can I ask to be enabled to host, to share my screen? I'll introduce myself for now. For those of you who I have not had the chance to meet yet, my name is Claudia Ahumada, and I'm the manager of civil society and communities advocacy in the Global Fund, which is really just a long way of saying that my job is to be sharing information and resources with civil society.
Partager des informations et des ressources avec les communautés de la société.
So I'm going to share my screen with you here. I've prepared a few slides.
Dans le cadre de la 7e reconstitution des ressources. Alors, je vais partager mon écran et vous présenter les diapos. Nous allons examiner et nous allons parcourir ensemble. Il y a 4 points phares sur lesquels je voudrais m'entretenir avec vous. Le premier est le changement.
Very significant changes in the global landscape that are affecting the way in which we campaign. Then I want to talk a little bit about how we've been engaging donors to reach our target of at least 18 billion. The road to the pledging conference, essentially key events that we are all engaging in. And then close with talking about some of the campaign tools that we would love for you all to engage with. So let's start with the challenging and evolving context. Money. No, the replenishment, some will say, is about money because what we are trying to do is raise at least $18 billion between now and the end of September. Before the war in Ukraine, the economic outlook globally already was quite strained. And what we've seen happen over the past few months is that global growth is projected to slow even more, while inflation is also persisting. Coupled with that, we've seen the war in Ukraine, the refugee crisis, and as well as conflicts in other parts of the world, increasing pressure on development aid budget. These are, as we know, major humanitarian emergencies. And what it means then is that donors, including the donors to the Global Fund, are being increasingly called upon to respond to these humanitarian emergencies and to provide funding to mitigate the effects of them. Along with that, despite the fact that we talk a little bit less about COVID than we did, say, a year ago, the pandemic is far from over, and the world is still bearing witness to both the health and the economic losses that are connected to COVID. What the silver lining in this, we're going to invite everyone to mute now, but we will have time for questions and discussion. So the silver lining that we can see around the COVID, not so much the pandemic, but the responses that we have very much seen how the work of the Global Fund Partnership, of which you are all part, has mitigated the negative consequences of COVID. So while we have seen backtracking on HIV, TB, and malaria, we know that the consequences would have been even more severe had it not been for the responses we have in place, for the community responses, and for the ability that the Global Fund Partnership has shown in terms of being flexible and adapting to this otherwise unknown scenario. Now, that changing scenario, so the pressures economically, the lack of economic growth, inflation, the war in Ukraine and other contexts and other places, all has an impact on how we get to at least 18 billion. And it impacts the way in which we are engaging with donors because the pressures and demands that they are facing are also evolving. From our experience, a successful replenishment, which we essentially define as getting to our target of at least 18 billion, requires advocating for increased overall funding for health and development more broadly. This is both globally and domestically. And increased contribution from existing OECD DAC donors. And here we're talking about increased contributions to the tune of at least 30% to get to the target. Also, we are seeking out a significant increase in the contribution from non-OECD donors and emerging economies who have typically given to the Global Fund with smaller amounts, but important nonetheless, and important also because they represent a show of solidarity and a powerful symbol that it really is a global fund for everyone. We're also seeking to secure commitments from new public donors, increasing pledges from the private sector. And this is an important one because at the previous replenishment 3 years ago, we achieved the milestone of $1 billion in pledges from the private sector. And that was historic, not only for the Global Fund, but for contributions in global health. And we are seeking to increase that significantly. And then we are also looking at expanding partnerships and mobilizing domestic resources for health, because what our investment case for their replenishment essentially demonstrates is that to achieve the at least 18 billion that are needed to get back on track with HIV, TB, and malaria, we need our traditional OECD DAC donors to increase their pledges by at least 30%, but we also count on an increase on domestic investments in health to the tune of 30%. So they really go hand in hand. Now, the feedback that we've been getting from donors to date has been quite encouraging in the sense that they understand the need for this target, that at least 18 billion. It's again 30% higher than what the Global Fund has ever sought to raise. But because the negative impact of COVID has been so evident for everyone, we haven't had really a single donor come to us and say, oh, you know, this is too much, or why are you asking for this and it's not needed? Everyone understands that it's needed. Then we also at the same time are hearing a lot of feedback from our donors about the constrained resource environment. And this is something, again, that we all fully understand, we're familiar with. It's the demands around humanitarian access, it's the demands around COVID. It's also looking at how, as a global community, we best prepare for the next pandemic. So what we say in a very short nutshell to these concerns is, one, we share them. We share and we fully acknowledge those concerns, but two, we also very strongly believe that the Global Fund's work contributes to each of these areas. We've seen it already with COVID, where the Global Fund was really the global entity able to quickly respond, to mobilize, to provide implementation to be able to answer. Then we've also seen it in conflict settings such as the Ukraine, where we've been able to provide additional funding to reach the communities to work hand in hand. So in our mind, it's really not one or the other, but how do you channel the funds that are raised to the Global Fund to meet these urgent needs? Now, among our donors, of course, is the US, and the US plays a particularly important role this replenishment because they are our host. And that means that they will be hosting our pledging conference in September of this year, most likely in the sidelines of the General Assembly of the United Nations. We do not have a date for that yet. When we do, we will be sure to share it. But beyond the date, the really exciting piece about the US hosting beyond its continued global health leadership is that they have made a request to Congress for up to $6 billion for the 7th replenishment of the Global Fund. And the trick or the catch in this offer is that it's essentially a matching offer. So in order to unlock the 6 billion that the United States would like to give, we need to be able to raise the remaining amounts of funds. And that's a powerful thing to know and to also emphasize when you're doing your advocacy, because we don't want to be leaving money on the table. If you know it's there, we can get it. And all we need to do is raise a counter for it, then it's an extra encouragement to go out and raise those funds. If we do not succeed in raising more, which we do not even want to think of, but if we weren't, it essentially decreases the pledge from the United States. So it's extremely, extremely important to keep in mind that pledging amount. Now, when it comes to mobilizing public donors, we are using a range of strategies and approaches that you'll see on this slide. So everything from direct outreach and meetings with them. We have had our executive director, Peter Sands, going really around the world to donor capitals, meeting with them along with other of our department heads. We're engaging with parliamentarians across different parties. It's really, as they say in the US, a cross-partisan issue that should interest everyone. It's about saving 20 million more lives. So how could you not agree with that? We are also calling on the United States to leverage its leadership and call upon other donors and other member states to increase their pledges by at least 30% to the Global Fund. We are mobilizing champions and influencers, well-known personalities, be it from sports, from cinema and others, so that they also join the call and help amplify the urgency of this work. We are, of course, coordinating and working with our civil society and community partners. And we are looking at engaging both traditional media for some of the big news outlets and also using social media. So we're hitting all targets and getting the message out there in as many ways as we can. Now, the road to the pledging conference is a busy one because we are doing these 6 things that I've just spoken to, but it's also a very, very short one. We are essentially talking within the Global Fund now about the last 100 days to the replenishment conference. So this slide of our milestones is the one that we started with at the beginning of the year. And we had a nice year lay ahead of us now. But as you can see, we are now just over the middle of it, which means that we have 100 days. And if you want to be like some of my more masochist colleagues at the Global Fund and you delete your weekends and other public holidays, you're down to something like 60 days. And I say this not to freak everyone out, but to say that we really, this is our final stretch and we need you so much and we count on you to do as much advocacy as you can, to reach out to your leaders, to reach out to donors. Some of the letters that Fezile was pointing out to in the beginning, they really hold power. They are so important because it's a way of going to these decision makers and these leaders and saying, we as civil society and as communities, we see you, we know what's going on, we are watching, and these are our expectations, these are our hopes. And this is what is on the line. And what's on the line is major. No, it really is. Do we choose to save an additional 20 million lives or not? And it should be an easy choice. It really should be. Now, on that timeline, there are a number of events that we have just recently completed, which were all opportunities for us to bring emphasis on the urgency of the replenishment and what is at stake. So we recently had in May the Global Fund's board meeting. Coinciding with that, there was President Biden's COVID summit, which put emphasis again on COVID-19 and also looking towards how the world best prepares for the next pandemics, the World Health Assembly, and the World Economic Forum. All of these were really great opportunities to show why we need to move forward with the replenishment and how it connects, because it really does connect to all of these things. If you want to do more work in the response to COVID, if you want to strengthen health systems for the next pandemic, then you need to secure the funds to do so. And that is the tool that the Global Fund Replenishment provides. The World Economic Forum was particularly exciting because we got our first private sector pledge announced there by Comic Relief to up to $10 million. So that was a great start, and what we are expecting will motivate other private sector partners to come forward and make their pledges public. Now, we're going to hear more about this from another one of the speakers today, but I wanted to touch briefly on some of the upcoming events that are really, really key for our replenishment advocacy. And one is coming up next week. It's the Commonwealth meeting in Kigali. And the Commonwealth is important in replenishment terms for, I would say, two main reasons. One is that it is where we will have the Kigali high-level summit on malaria and other neglected tropical diseases. So that will be important. We need to shine a light on malaria. We need to shine a light on why malaria also requires more funding, more focus, greater partnerships and accountability with our civil society partners. Then the second reason why Commonwealth is especially important this year is because it is one of the last global major opportunities that we will have to call upon the leaders of the Commonwealth, including the United Kingdom, to increase their pledges to the Global Fund. And again, I can't say it enough, we need at least a 30% increase or we are not making our target. So as much useful noise that we can make at the Commonwealth, the better. Then we also have the G7 coming up in Germany, and the G7 is an amazing platform for the replenishment in the sense that this is where we hope and expect that we will have some of our G7 donors make an announcement of their increased pledges. We've managed already, thanks to the work of many partners, to get some positive language on the 7th replenishment in the G7 Development Ministers communique. So now it's a matter of really matching that very strong language with a commitment to increase pledges from donor governments. And then the other one we have coming up, which is also important, is the International AIDS Conference, which is taking place in Montreal, Canada, towards the end of July. And I'm sure many of you know the AIDS Conference is a really important opportunity for activism, for advocates to come together, to share latest developments, to develop partnerships. In the context of the replenishment, it's also particularly important because we hope it may be an opportunity for the Canadian government to announce its pledge, or for other partners from the private sector to do so. Now, I'm going to start wrapping up to make sure that we have some time for discussion. And I'll wrap up just by speaking about the preparations for the pledging conference. So the pledging conference is essentially our last moment, the last moment that we have to secure that at least 18 billion. As I've mentioned, we already have a number of pledges announced. So it's not that you come together and everything happens in that 2-3 days, but it is where you go the final mile. Because we are working on a shorter timeline, and we're also most likely going to have the pledging conference in conjunction with the United Nations General Assembly, it's going to have a bit of a different format than pledging conferences have had before. For those of you that have participated before, the 6th Replenishment, for example, was really a week-long program with side events and different opportunities for engagement. Here, it's going to be very focused on the heads of states and other decision makers that can commit the funds needed to pledge. And there will be still some opportunities for civil society to officially engage in the program through speaking slots in 2 or 3 panels that will make part of the pledging conference. And then we know also that the GFAN family is planning to do something on the sidelines of the pledging conference. The real opportunity for engagement beyond that, though, is in the run-up. If you want to support the replenishment more than the pledging conference itself in September, we need you between now and August. So let me stop just by saying the Global Fund, it really is a movement. When I say that we count on you as our partners, we sincerely do. Fight for what counts is our rallying cry for this replenishment. So if you haven't already taken to social media and reached out to your leaders to tell them what counts for you, please do that now. There are many ways in which you can do that if you go to the replenishment tab of our website, including by taking your own selfie, by taking a picture, by doing a tweet. You choose what resonates with you, but please tell the world that it counts. Fighting for what counts for the replenishment is going to save at least 20 million lives. Thank you so much, everyone. And I really look forward to hearing your questions and having your continued support. Fezile, shall I hand back to you? I don't know if you want to do questions now or at the end.
I think it's great to do, it would be better to do questions now. Thanks for that, Claudia. And also just to remind everyone, our French-speaking colleagues, that we also do have interpretation. I'm not sure if I mentioned that at the beginning. So like, yeah, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there is an option with like that global icon for interpretation. Any questions for Claudia? Just feel free to, you can raise your hand or just type in the chat box and we'll read your questions out. Okay, I see there's one question. Lucy Daniel, go ahead.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much for the presentation and for the webinar. So my name is Lucy Daniel. I'm working for a feminist NGO called Equipop, based in France and West Africa, and we are working more specifically on the issues related to sexual and reproductive health and rights and HIV. So thank you very much for the presentation. I was just trying to brainstorm listening to you, Claudia, and so I just wanted to let you know that at the French level we are advocating towards the government to increase its contribution to the Global Fund. We sent a letter to President Macron. We just had elections, as you probably know, he was re-elected, and I'm hoping that we will meet his councillors maybe in July or in September before the replenishment. And I was just thinking, you might know that France and other donors are pushing for feminist foreign policies more and more, and which means that in the case of France, the government is really expecting mechanisms like the Global Fund to be a way to push for their feminist agenda. So I'm just wondering how will you frame your work with this feminist agenda? You know, how is this something that you have included in your strategy in terms of, you know, results from the Global Fund, accountability, or maybe in terms of the replenishment conference itself? Will gender equality be like, you know, a top priority there? And also I just saw that, so if I understand well, you are planning on convening an event on this issue in Montreal, right, at the conference. So I think this is really good news, and I'd be very happy to support to support you in any way for this conference, and maybe, you know, try to invite friends in the panel, and because I think this is the sort of spaces where we can, you know, really push for a feminist perspective in the fight against HIV. And I'm not saying this in a, you know, solely opportunistic way. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it will make sense for donors like friends.
Thank you, Lucy. Claudia, go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Lucy. So yes, a couple of things. We are working on a paper that should be ready, hopefully by the end of this week, around the impact of the Global Fund's work on women and girls and gender equality, because it's one of the areas where the Global Fund does a lot, but we haven't been so good at articulating it. And many of our donors ask us for it, and we need to be able to have that handy. So once we have that paper ready, I'll share it with Sophie and Fezile and ask them to share it with all of the participants here. Then in addition to that, we have the session that you've mentioned that's set for the 29th of July, but the time is still to be set. And it's going to focus on human rights, gender, and equity within the Global Fund's work. I think your idea of bringing in France there is excellent. So far, we've really looked at Canada, but I think France is also very relevant. And yeah, it makes sense for Canada with English and French. And let's talk more. I'm gonna put my email just in the chat for you, Lucy, if you can drop me a line. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, great. And I will also be there for information, just sharing this. And I'd be happy also to connect with other activists on the call who will be attending the conference. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Lucy. Any other questions or comments? All right. It looks like there's just a comment like, yeah, Mohammed, like, yeah, being appreciative to hear about the study. So I'm sure, like, yeah, everyone will be looking forward to like looking at that, Claudia, as soon as it's out. All right, thank you so much. I think now we can hand over to our colleagues at GFAN Africa, Zeinabou and Olivia. Are you ready?
Yes. Can I share my screen, please, if it's possible? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I will try to speak first in English, and I will go to French. So hi everyone. Once again, my name is Zeinabou Ide. I'm the program officer at Impact Sante Afrique and also CS for me and GFAN Africa. Francophone, and I'm going to present you the Meet the Target campaign. So the Meet the Target, it's a campaign launched by civil society and communities affected by HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria. So the three main objectives of this campaign is first to urge world leaders to increase their contribution by at least 30% for the 7th replenishment of the Global Fund, and that will be held this September to reach at least 18 billion. And the second point will be to lead African countries to increase their national health budget by 2% from 2021. And the third one will be to mobilize and engage and coordinate advocacy action led by CSOs. So the target audience will be the policymakers, embassies, head of states, Ministry of Health, donor countries, and partners and implementing partners. And we have we have planned to have many coordinating action, such as using letter templates addressing to the leaders, media guide, social media toolkit, article, and press release as well. And we have also the communication channels that will be used. The first one will be the digital media, social media, as we said, like, for example, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and also the traditional media such as television and also radio. We plan to speak a lot about that. And now I will explain you the Meet the Target challenge. So I will go in French, so it will be easier for me. And la campagne Meet the Target sera en fait virale. L'idée, c'est qu'on puisse
The campaign Meet the Target will be viral. We will have a campaign. We will
rajouter et joindre à la cause les jeunes. Cette fois-ci, on va essayer de voir comment est-ce qu'on peut travailler avec les jeunes qui seront engagés dans la lutte contre ces 3 maladies et surtout sensibiliser par rapport à l'importance de mobiliser le maximum de personnes afin qu'on puisse toucher la cible qui est vraiment nos chefs d'État, afin qu'on puisse avoir les 18 milliards de qui pour sauver 20 millions de vies. Et nous avons prévu d'avoir des TikTok, des TikTok challenge, mais aussi attaquer aussi sur Twitter, Facebook en faisant des publications pour identifier nos chefs d'État afin qu'ils puissent être présents à la 7e conférence, mais aussi augmenter leur contribution d'au moins 30% par rapport à 2019. Donc, l'idée, c'est que par rapport à Meet the Target, c'est d'avoir la main tendue, écrire 18 milliards de dollars sur la paume de la main et vraiment essayer de faire des publications en identifiant le maximum de leaders possibles afin que cela puisse être vu et identifier aussi les pays du G7 comme la France, le Japon.
For our comeback to be more visible in many countries, and for all the countries to be able to increase their contributions. And we have also some conversations, and we want to show the example to raise the awareness of all the participants. Yannick Noah joined our fight, and I'm going to send you the links and the videos and the photo of these commitments. And that is how we are going to work to for this campaign. We are going to work with people, French-speaking people. We also have the e-banner and with messages. Except this, we will also have an engagement board, because you should have, we need the information of your organization, your nationality, and and know who you are. You also have letters that will be sent to different countries. We also have to collect your data, and then not to come to ask your information. Now I'm going to talk about the next steps of GFAN upcoming days of action. We are already started in April, and then now we are in June. Tomorrow we will have an action with GFAN is from Asian Pacific, and all the region will work in a coordinated way. This action will be sent to Korea and to UK. You already talked about this issue. We have a lot of activities that will be carried out up to September. I'm going to end here, and I will give the floor to Olivia but we should know that the campaign started, this campaign meets the target started, and this campaign is diffused, and we are very pleased to have this engagement of the communities and civil societies. I'm going to send you the link, and I will email you to explain you how you can join the campaign, because it's very important. As we said, it is important to carry out activities and key days to be able to reach more people, to raise more resources. I thank you. Thank you very much, Tina. Merci. Je m'appelle Olivia. Je suis
to coordinate GFAN Francophone Africa and also the CS for Me network.
Sorry, pardon. Olivia, before you continue, may I just step in to assist colleagues on the chat who've been struggling with the interpretation? So everyone, if you go at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see, so where it says, you should be able to see like an icon like that says interpretation. Just click on the English if you're English speaking, and French if you're like French speaking. And Nana, like in my experience, like there's no need maybe to mute the original language. It is clear if you just click on the English option. Thank you. Olivia?
Yes, thank you very much. So I will speak in English. And so I'm Olivia, I'm Tina's colleague, and we work together to coordinate GFAN Francophone Africa, but also the CS for Me network. And we are very happy to be here with you. And Tina just presented the Meet the Target campaign, and we want to thank everyone, all the different networks that are co-leading this campaign with us, including Women for Global Fund, but also GFAN Asia Pacific and others. So it's a very global, collective voices of civil society to complement the Fight for What Counts campaign and to ensure that we can engage leaders. So I will just quickly talk about the Commonwealth. I think Claudia covered it pretty well earlier, what it's all about, but particularly for civil society, we have a few opportunities to engage at the summit. So the first one is around the Youth Forum, which will take place on the 19th to the 21st. And during that forum, there will be a list of activities, plenary sessions, presentations, group works, and also even specific awards. There will be an opportunity for a young person to win an award on malaria in NTDs, for example. So during that Youth Forum, the program is available on their website. If you Google Youth Forum Commonwealth, you'll see the full program and the different activities. But it's a big opportunity for us in working malaria, TB, and HIV to ensure that key messages around the need that this generation would like to see those three epidemics being come to an end. And it's very important that that this generation of youth see that, so, and then remind global leaders that we don't want, we no longer want to continue having to suffer because of malaria, TB, and HIV. So there will be concretely an opportunity for youth there to engage and to ensure that their voices can be heard during the development of the Youth Forum communique. And the Youth Forum communique would be a sort of a statement from youth that will come out of the Youth Forum and that will be disseminated to head of state And this is also something that the Commonwealth will have to follow up on. So it's very important to be engaged in that space. So we look forward to have your contribution. If you have a key messages that can be pushed via the youth for that communique, please email it to us. My colleague Tina will send her email in the chat, so you can also share if you have a key message. So we'll make sure to share that with the youth that will be attending the forum and have the opportunity to push for that message. The second opportunity is the Malaria and NTD Summit, which would take place on the 23rd, and it's another opportunity where youth will have their voices and to be heard, and they will also have opportunity to be on stage. We will have youth speaking. We will also have youth who will be on stage and who will be able to showcase what they want and what they think the priority should be in terms of malaria and entities. But of course, we'll make sure that in the key message, we have a strong focus on the need that we need to really push to accelerate the fight against the 3 diseases, not just malaria and entities. So that message will also be a part of what the youth will present during the Malaria and Entity Summit. And yes, so those are the big moments for civil society. There will be others. There's the Women Forum and the People Forum. We know some of the civil society organizations will take part in those forums. So we'll also make sure that we have key messages so they can push in the different discussion sessions. And lastly, there's a possible meeting organized by GFAN Africa on the 24th for civil society with parliamentarians to come together to reflect on what is at stake in terms of the 7th Global Fund replenishment and really what needs to be done to ensure that we can meet that target, because if we don't meet that target, we will all fail as a global community. So those are the different opportunities that we have now. And if you plan to attend the Commonwealth Summit, please send us a message so we make sure we can link you to the others. We will also organize a possible networking youth health meeting for all the youth present and all the civil society present to get to meet each other. We are still finalizing the day and time for that during that week, and we will be together with our colleagues from working on entities. So if you plan to attend the forum, please drop us your email in the chat and we'll make sure to contact you. Thank you, and thanks to the organizer for the meeting, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Olivia. Any questions or input from anyone? I've noted your comment, Sharifa. And Zeinabou has responded already. And we can also she's added also the Global Fund on Fight Forward counts. Okay, great. Any questions, anyone? Let's see if I can find hands. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or any additional comments. The one on hashtags has been responded to. And I hope that's all. All right. If we're all happy, I think may I please just, Sheila, please mute yourself. Sophie, maybe you can assist with muting if Sheila is struggling. If we're all comfortable and clear and happy to really just, continue with the work, let's then have Quentin, who's going to give us some reflections from today and also in additional inputs. Quentin, are you ready?
Hi, yes, I am. How are you, everyone? So I'm going to pop in the chat a few resources for all of us. Here they are. Yeah, so I know that I don't want to come back again and again to all of the points that have already been covered. Something I want to touch upon in terms of messaging, in terms of priorities, and in terms of trying to help everyone make sense of what is happening and what will be happening over the next few months. The first one is around messaging. So what are really the core message that we should be focused on? Hi, Ernestine, we can hear you. If you can mute yourself. So what are the core messaging that we should really be focusing on over the next few months? So the first one is that we need 30% increase from the 6th replenishment for all major donors. We can't get to 18 billion if we don't get those 30%. And if we have missing millions, and that's really the sort of the second key idea, missing millions is missing lives, right? Like the objective is that these 18 billions are going to help us save over 20 million lives over the next 3 years. So if we come short to that, that's the cost. That's what we fight for. We fight for all those lives to be saved. And as Claudia already talked about, there's a risk of leaving money on the table. So the US has already committed 6 billion, so which would be a third of a total of 18 billion that is total objective. We need all of the donors we need their commitment to add up to 12 billion. If they don't, we're gonna leave US money on the table. That's been the language we're now focusing on. It's the idea of there's that money that is there. It's easy to take. You just have to commit. And if you don't, it's just going to stay there. It's going to be wasted. So now in terms of which countries really are we targeting in terms of the advocacy, we've been talking a lot about the UK, especially around the Commonwealth meeting that is next week. But we're also talking a lot about the UK because it's a large donor. It's the second or third, depending on how you want to count France, largest donor to the Global Fund. And it's a worrying donor because we haven't had only positive messages coming out of the UK. They're cutting out their ODA budgets, and that's quite worrying. So we really hope that they will not the Global Fund, and beyond that, they will increase enough. Canada is likely to be announce their pledge early. As we said, there's a suspicion that they might use the 8th 22 conference in Montreal to announce their pledge. That is important because not a lot of countries have announced early. The US, of course, has announced back in November, back earlier this year. All right. So the US has already committed. So they've set the tone. But afterward, there's not been a lot of commitment. We have Luxembourg that committed, I think, 10 days ago now, which is exciting, but small donor. Canada announcing early would really set a tone, and so we really need the pledge of Canada to be large enough to really set the right tone, to make sure that all of the donors understand that they can see that each other are committed to reach the 18 billion. The EU is another worrying donor, where there were initially announcements that they will maintain their pledge rather than they were increasing it. And now they are talking about additional budgets that could go to the Global Fund, which is quite reassuring and exciting because of the way budgeting works for the European Commission. It's hard for them to commit additional funds. So the fact that they were willing to do that is quite exciting. And finally, just as of now, we have a number of Nordic countries that we have also been working with. So we have an open letter for Denmark. The link is in the chat. But we're also working on a letter with Sweden. Sweden has announced that they would be cutting their current contribution to the Global Fund. It's worrying. They say that they have to because of the cost of hosting refugees from Ukraine. They haven't yet announced that they would. They haven't yet announced their pledge, but they're really markets that is important to focus on. All of this said, I think it's important to keep in mind, because as Claudia said, all the donors matter. but it's also really important to remember that some donors do matter more than others, in the sense that the top 8 donors represent over 80% of all of the resources of the Global Fund. So the reason why we focus so much on the UK is that if the UK does not reach 30%, even if all of Northern Europe increase by, I don't know, 100%, they're not going to make a difference. So it's extremely important if we hope to meet the target, we need all these top donors to really to do this 30% effort. And so it's important when you think of your work and your advocacy to keep that in mind. There are specific countries that absolutely need to make the pledge we expect out of them. So that's in terms of target. Now, in terms of actions, you might start to feel like we keep asking the same thing again and again. We have like open letters here and there. If you've been on the GFAN on the GFAN listserv, you're getting these days, there'll be an announcement of one new open letter every week. But that's because they're not going to the same people, right? Like the Minister for Development of Denmark isn't the same as the Minister of Sweden, isn't the German Chancellor, etc. So for the next few months, we're going to keep doing the same thing, but for different countries. And there are a lot of donors, so it's going to be constantly going back, and it feels like a bit of a hamster in a wheel. But it's now or never, right? Like we only have, as Claudia said, very scaringly, 60 days left, not counting weekends. So it's important not to start scrolling through your inbox, see another call for action, and say, oh well, I did one last week, that one is not important. No, all of them are extremely important because they're targeting different people. And so the other important thing to keep in mind, especially because it has to do with the specific theme of this webinar and what is bringing us together, which are questions of gender, and there's really an opportunity because a lot of the countries that are harder, are harder to reach, are less enthusiastic. They're announcing cuts in their budgets for aid, etc. But they typically have kept gender, women and girls in their priorities. So it's particularly important in our advocacy to leverage that opportunity, because it goes both ways, meaning that by showing how much the Global Fund does for gender equality, by fighting against 3 diseases that have massive consequences in terms of gender equality, we also ensure that that the Global Fund will truly commit to pursue these goals, because as our advocacy really pushes that forward, this will be what donors will be expecting out of the fund. So it's also now a way to really use those arguments centered on how fighting against those 3 diseases has an impact on gender issues, and will result in empowerment and gain of women and girls across the world. It's particularly important to make those points now because they are more likely to reach donors that are hard to reach, and it's a good way to make the point that the Global Fund needs to do more work on these questions. I also wanted to pick on 2 things, and I will close after that because I see that we're running behind time. The first one is I want to highlight the importance of the Meet the Target campaign that was announced by our colleague from GFAN Africa, and especially the importance of raising the profile of the Global Fund replenishment in the broader society. Like with GFAN, we don't really do viral campaigns. We tend to target policymakers or advocates, but not typically the broader public. But of course, policymakers listen to the broader public, and there's been a deluge of issues over the past 2 years, and it's been really hard to keep people focused on global health, on HIV, TB, and malaria. And so it's important now to make noise around these questions and make sure that people, that it's on the news, on TV, that people start talking about it, especially in countries that are benefiting from Global Fund programs, so that information then comes back up. So it's really exciting. It's a really exciting moment, and we're really excited to support the campaign. And finally, and I think this is I should have mentioned it before in the the key messages, but around malaria specifically, it's been very clear what the impact of COVID has been on HIV and on TB. On malaria, I think we've had the impression that malaria was less impacted. It was less impacted in 2020. We know that. We don't have yet figures for 2021. But what we know is that malaria is hitting worse the poorest countries, and they will be the one that will be worse hit by current inflation, the slowing of global growth. And so it's also a point that it's also something you want to carry across in your advocacy, that even though it looks like the fight against malaria hasn't suffered from COVID just as much, and that countries have been more resilient, it might be now actually that we see the most impact on malaria over the past 2 years. So that was a bit of a side point, but I think that's it for me, and I'll take questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you for that, Quentin. Any questions for Quentin or comments? Okay, looks like we're all good. I will ask now, like in terms of our GFAN partners, Rachel, if you're ready from your end to then just take us through, like, your updates.
Great. Can I give me sharing rights for the screen, please? Thank you. Sorry, I will need to find where my Zoom disappeared to. Oh, give me a second. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rachel.
So can I check if the screen is showing for everyone?
Yes, we can see it.
Great, thank you so much. So very brief updates. I know we're really behind time. So just some updates from the Asia Pacific region. Some of you might have seen the slides before. They're slightly updated from the meeting we had in Berlin 2 weeks ago. So GFAN Asia Pacific has been working with many of our partners at the regional, global, as well as national level in terms of high-level meetings and events around campaigns, supporting days of action, collecting sign-on letters that are targeted. So what we're doing in Asia Pacific is slightly different. We do understand that each letter is targeted to different people, but the messaging is almost generally the same. So rather than having to go back to our partners each and every single time a letter needs to be sent, because very soon they'll fast ignore my emails. We're collecting sign-ons from organizations in the region that we can append on to each of the letters after we share the letters, individual letters with them. So we are working around some of the C7 and C20 work, especially around the vaccine access and global health working group. We do know that the financial intermediary fund has been one of the touchy subjects regarding funding for pandemic prevention, preparedness and response. So we're also looking at working on areas of private sector and foundations. If I'm speaking too fast, which I'm likely doing for the interpreter, please do let me know. We're also working with our partners, obviously, to for some of the events at AIDS 2022. So we've already also started planning some of the appreciations and beyond after the replenishment meeting, in the hope that we would be able to reach the at least 18 billion target. So this is some of the work that we've done in the last 2 years around COVID-19, supporting in-country partners to develop investment case to strengthen their messages and advocacy messages around increasing domestic resource mobilization. This is a sticker pack. I know many of you, especially colleagues who are probably half my age, are interested in using sticker packs. So maybe let me show this video. So I think if you can, Anu, if you're on the call, could you just pop the link for the instructions for the sticker pack for people to get to? I'll move to the next screen, which shows some of the key activities in the region that we're working with partners to. We're also going to be reaching out to some of our African partners to also reach out to their counterparts in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Ministry of Health to, the right word would be to influence the attendance from high representing donors in the particular embassy events that we're holding. So a little bit of an update on TCAT 8, which I know is of interest to many of the partners. So there's only 2.5 months left where Africa-Japan Forum is actually the lead partner that we're working with in Japan on this. We are planning to work together for a letter to the government of Japan in the middle of July. So more letters that we would require you to sign on and support, obviously. There is a survey that's being developed, and we'll pop the links very shortly into the chat as well. That's both in English and French, that is led by civil society in Japan, that will really support our colleagues in Japan in terms of training, in terms of framing how Japan actually develop and finalize the development aid for health. So this is what we have at this point. There are no side events that will be in person in Tunisia, and there will only be side events that are held virtually. The call for announcements will be at the end of month. So this is all I have at this point of time, and a kind reminder to all colleagues that we're soliciting your signs for a letter to the President of South Korea. I'm just popping the information in the chat box for you to reach, and please do sign on and share this among your partners. Please do provide the information in all the columns, because we will not be able to use sign on or incomplete. Thank you. Over to you, Fez.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Thank you for that. Any questions, anyone, or comments?
Actually, Fezile, I just have one question to Rachel. It's just about the letters, Rachel. I heard you say you're collecting regional sign-ons. So we signed on as Women for Global Fund. Does it matter that we're a global network? And does it help if you know, folks not from your region sign on? Thanks.
Sure. So maybe let me clarify. There are two sign-ons that we're doing. So one of this is the President for South Korea. The links are already in the chat box. Sorry, let me resend the link for the sign-on again, because I see that it's not clear. So this link is for our global and regional and national colleagues to sign on to. The other sign-on I was referring to is that we have collected all the organizational support for the Global Fund in the Asia and Pacific region, and we're continuing to do so to build up a database. This is to avoid us having to go each and every single time there is a sign-on that we would need them to. Of course, we will share the letter for them, and then we let them know that they are not agreeing to sign on to this, we'll remove that sign on from the list. But at least we now have a database that we can use to append each and every time for the Asia and Pacific region, for example. So I hope that clarifies your question, Sophie.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Veronica.
Hello. Hello,
Go
everyone.
ahead, Veronica, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for all the presenters who have presented their formative information. I was wondering, in all the presentation and whatever it has been discussed in the conversation, I would wish to know if at all African will get this opportunity, because I have seen a certain presentation which was shared by the last presenter, showing the countries which will be given that opportunity. And I was wondering, I'm from Tanzania, working with a national network of women living with HIV. So we take a gratitude to see that this opportunity benefits all people. So that is what I wanted to know, if at all it would also be extended to African country. Thank you so much.
Maybe we can start with you, Rachel, and then go.
Sure, but I think this is a question for our GFAN Africa colleagues. The question was if something similar is happening in the African region. I do understand that GFAN Africa is working very closely around CHOGUM, around some of the embassy events for the United Kingdom, etc. So maybe Olivia or Tina Zeinabou might want to reply to that question.
Yes, so there is action, there is activity that have planned to targeted African countries, and as we said, we have CHOGUM and also the AU summit. So we will let you know the activities that will be held, but definitely we have campaigns and their action for targeting African leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments, or reflections? I think it would be important to also just hear from some of you in terms of like how you're feeling. So I know, for an example, like maybe just to put a spotlight on Nana, for an example, you're also part of the media training we had. So in terms of the efforts that you all have, and not only Nana, but you all have been respectively pushing from your different like corners, and reflecting also on what was presented today. How are you feeling in terms of your energy and in terms of your commitment, considering, I think it was really important, Claudia and Quintin, for you to highlight that it's literally just 60 days. That is not a lot. And like, yeah, but what still needs to be done, like, is quite, you know, we still have a lot ahead of us. So just to get a sense of, you know, like how you're feeling, and also just reflections from this session.
Thanks, Fezile. And no, you haven't put me on the spot. Let me just start by appreciating all the presenters and the presentations they gave. It's always good to get as much information as possible. I think it's very helpful as you are, you know, navigating, you know, how you can be involved and how you can be engaged, all the things that are happening, so that you can see where, you know, when you're, you know, asked to submit something, how it impacts on a bigger deliverable. So I think that's really important and very appreciated. Yeah, I think when, you know, they said 60 days left, I was like, wow, that's very little time. When you're planning something, you know, you're usually looking at a whole year, and now it's like, you know, it's crunch time. And I think the reality is that something could be happening every single day for those 60 days to make sure that we get the necessary resources to continue to meet our targets and achieve the results that we want. So I think, yeah, you know, basically coining something around that is really important. And so it made me think, how can I start thinking around that and the urgency that's required to make sure that we get the pledges that are required. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for that, Nana. Anyone else?
We don't plan with money in mind.
I'm not sure, Habib, maybe let's just mute if you're not going to be inputting. I think maybe it might be by mistake that you're unmuted. All right. I think maybe just taking like yeah, from what Nana is sharing, And I believe also, like, yeah, maybe it could be the same sentiments, everyone, that right now, I think the great opportunity that we have, considering like the different efforts that were shared with us today, it's really that there's already so much that is being built into, like, you know, the different campaigns and the initiatives. So we are not basically starting, you know, like afresh. So it just means that for the next, like the 60 days that we have remaining, like we need to just, you know, like put on all our effort to just continue like making noise and amplifying those messages, signing on to, like, you know, those letters. Like it may seem like, you know, just a small ask on your end in terms of, you know, like the time that you actually need to just click on the link, sign on, but it's really important. And I think what's also, again, important is actually the recognition that the voices are not just coming from, you know, like maybe somewhere in Geneva. It's actually all of us who would be affected if the target is not met. So it's really important and encouraging all of you to really just keep on, like, yeah, continue with those actions. And then lastly, as you will see, so like from social media initiatives and campaigns that have been shared, like, so we'll share the recording, but then also on our end, this is really like an important like a initiative like for Women for Global Fund. So we will continue having these discussions. As some of you maybe have been part of the previous webinar, we'll have another webinar coming up August, but we also just for this month of June have WhatsApp e-learning sessions where we'll delve deeper into some of the discussions and points that were presented today. So do keep an eye out on our website and also social media platforms, and also the different platforms like from our partners like GN Africa, GFAN Asia Pacific, GFAN, and then the Global Fund as well. So thank you so much, everyone. A quick, like, yeah, check-in, Sophie, any last input? And then I'll also go to the speakers to just check like your last words, like, yeah, just parting shots on your end. Sophie?
Thanks so much to Fezile for facilitating this, and all the speakers who've joined today, and everyone who's joined. I just want to, I would like to go back to Veronica. Your question is really important. And I think, you know, we would say to you, don't wait for Africa or Tanzania. You're from Tanzania, right? To be included. You know, so one of the things that we've been doing, and I'll just share my screen quickly, is on the Global Fund website, they have this pledges and contributions tracker. You can go and actually see how much your country gave. So for example, in here, the pledges from Uganda, and you can see how much they pledged in this cycle that we're in, and how much they are yet to give. And Veronica, you're from Tanzania, but I can't find Tanzania on this list. So I think they are not, they didn't give a contribution. So, you know, you'll see in the next couple of days, videos that are coming out from Women for Global Fund advocates, calling out countries to do things. Tanzania is a Commonwealth country. There will be this meeting that Zaina and Olivia were talking about the Commonwealth countries. So you could do a little video, stick it online, say, you know, I'm from Tanzania, I'm a Commonwealth country, and we're calling on the UK to step up your action. So I just think, don't wait. We all need to jump in and play our part to help the Global Fund get to the 18 million. Thanks, Fezile. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Sophie. Claudia, any parting shots from your end?
Just to say a big thank you to everyone for the continued advocacy. If you need anything, please reach out. I've also dropped into the chat now the link to the Global Fund website where you can find all of the replenishment tools, campaign materials, and more. Thank you.
Thanks. Olivia and Zeinabou?
Madam, let us not waste our time. Now let us first go to the
So
site.
Olivia left us. She had an emergency, but as APAC Sante Afrique and GFAN Afrique Francophone, we are very pleased to have you on board. And thank you, Sophie and colleagues, for giving us the opportunity to talk about the Meet the Target campaign. And we are very excited to work with you. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rachel?
No additional thoughts, but thanks everyone for all the hard work that you're doing. It's going to be an uphill battle, but I'm sure that we'll get there in one or more pieces. Sending love. Bye.
Thanks. Quentin?
Yeah, let everyone move on, but thanks everyone for the chance to speak and for all of your efforts. As Rachel said, we'll make it through in one piece and more. Good luck, bon courage.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for making time to join us today. We look forward to more engagements, whether it's through the webinar, the social media hashtags and like campaigns, and also the different activities that we'll be having. So thank you so much. We'll share the video afterwards and looking forward to engaging further again. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your mornings and evenings.
Thank you so much, Fezile and everybody else. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.